Evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second edition of this Shanti Niketan Vasant Vihar diary. As we, hear stories and anecdotes from various residents who have been here for years, and they will tell us about this very nice area that we all live in. The two colonies, Shanti Niketan as the elder brother or sister, and the one which came about first, and then followed by Vasant Vihar. We had some very interesting sessions the last time, which was actually about 2 weeks ago. And today we have expanded the scope to include speakers from Shantiniketan. In fact, uh, it's a great pleasure and privilege that a lot of residents from Shantiniketan have joined us today. Let me start by requesting Vandana Bhatnagar, who, in fact, in a sense, initiated this concept of VV Diary by bringing about digital format of VV Diary and had put together the first issue. And as she says, this is going to be an ongoing process. So, Vandana, please tell us a little more about this ongoing process.
Thank you, Raj. And I'd just like to say that it's really great to see the follow-up session on BB Diary. And it looks like there'll be more, given that this has generated a fair amount of interest. So kudos to you and Sanjana for taking this theme forward in the club sessions. So for those who aren't familiar with what this is about, what basically we have done is bring together a collection of memories and it's a website, basically an online repository where we've basically creating this collection of memories. We've created a kind of a timeline of various events in Vasant Vihar's journey. And also we've got a section which is talking about the history of this area, which goes back about 600 years. So any of you, when you're sitting around over a cup of coffee, can just open it up and go over some of these details that we've captured. And I'll be sharing the web link on the WhatsApp group as well. So any of you who haven't yet shared are most welcome to provide us some memoir, anecdote, any pictures only by themselves would be also great. So we've added 3 more memoirs since the last time we had the session. Millie Murgai, in fact, discovered old documents from 1957, which had been painstakingly maintained by her father. And it includes the original letter giving the allocations for 600 square yard plots. So it's very interesting, and I'll be uploading that as well. And this list will keep growing. So a couple of more nuggets just to tempt you onto the Nair website. There used to be apparently a river that used to flow through this area in the earlier times, well before Vasant Vihar, called Nudra. And then there were mica hills behind F block, which was shared by Nimaji in her memories. And of course, that's now covered by the metro and the state bhavans. And apparently in Millie Murgai's document collection that they've got, we found that this area was going to be called Basant Nagar till as late as 1968, but they thankfully changed the name to Vasant Vihar. So that was a close call, I think. And the other thing which I thought most people knew, but I think some people did not, was that the whole multiplex revolution in India actually has its genesis in our very own Basant Lok. Because PVR, the P is referring to Priya, which is our very own Priya. So that's, just to tempt you into the website and explore more. And they say that people without a knowledge of their past is like a tree without roots. So it's wonderful that we are rediscovering our roots. And in this session, we'll discover some more. So we look forward to capturing some of those in our website as well. And so that's it. Thank you very much, and look forward to hearing all of these memories today.
Thank you so much, Vandana. Absolutely right that the multiplex or this chain of PVR started in Vasant Vihar. I'm sure everybody knows the full form of PVR, but just for reconfirmation, it stands for Priya Village Roadshow. And in fact, the Bijli brothers who own it, I think one of them at least is a resident of Vasant Vihar. Also, since you mentioned a river flowing through this area, I can say that, temporarily I stayed as a tenant on Purvi Marg. And whenever we had heavy rainfall, the Purvi Marg used to turn into Purvi River. So we've had the river flowing through Vasant Vihar even as recently as, last monsoon or whatever. But anyway, let me start this evening by, we've started with Vandra's introduction, but the first person who's going to tell us more about her experience in this region, Vasant Vihar Shanti Niketan, is, I would say, one of the stalwarts of Vasant Vihar Club. In fact, she has been a great inspiration for all of us. And so, Padmaji, over to you. Please do tell us what are your memories of this area.
Thank you, Raj. Uh, I would like to talk. I'm not going to talk about my memories as yet, but I'm going to talk what Vandana has said about our roots. So when I first came to Delhi, I mean, after my husband retired and we came to Delhi in 1990, we were in our last posting was he was the ambassador in Switzerland, and we came back in the 90s. That was the time I joined the Shanti Niketan Residents Association, and I was given a directory of the Shanti Niketan thing. And what intrigued me was that at the back of the directory, there was a map. And the map said, Plan for Cooperative Housing Society of Home Affairs on Shanti Path Extension. So that sort of intrigued me. What was this legend? Why were we not Shanti Niketan or Vasant Vihar? Why was it Cooperative Housing Society for Home Affairs? But I sort of, we went on and all like that till 2012 when Gautam Vora was the president of RWA in Vasant Vihar. He started a magazine called Action Today. And that was when he asked me if I would write something about Shanti Niketan. So I thought this was a good idea to research. I talked to quite a few people. None of them seemed to know why it was this, which was very strange because some of our old residents like Mr. Krishan Chandra, Mr. Verma knew nothing. But Dr. Kachwaha directed me to Mr. Goyal, who used to be the legal advisor. He lived in 2 by 35 and he was the legal advisor for DDA. So what information I have got is from him. Now, if people have some more information, that would be very interesting. So according to him, you see, there were 3 or 4 people in the Home Affairs. The person who really had this idea was a person called Swarupanand Bhatnagar, who has his son has a house in 2 by 27 now. He was the one who mooted this idea that he was close to his retirement. So he felt that we should have some plot where the government could allot us something. So there were about 3 or 4 people. One of them was, I believe he was a part of in the external affairs, but he was Sardar Fateh Singh. I think he lived in Vasant Vihar at one time. There was one Mr. Chawla who lived on the 3rd Street. All of them belonged to Shanti. Ultimately, they were given plots in Shanti Niketan. They were all in the Home Affairs Ministry. And they approached the government to give them some land. Since the number of people were not too many, they were only, I think, at that point, they were only about 10 or so that had become. The government allotted them a land which is now the Sports Club of India. But the Defense Ministry did not want this. Thankfully for us, they did refuse this. They said this was too close to the seat of power and all the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and also this couldn't be given to them. So it was at that time that another resident there was no Shanti Niketan, but it was Mr. Jagannath Bija, who had bought a land in this area, which was not called Shanti Niketan, but it was called the extension of Munirka village extension. And also there was a place, I think it still is Masoodpur or something, and it was sometimes called Masoodpur or the extension of Shanti Munirka village. And on the other side, we still have what is still called Mochi Gaon. So, and it was a barren land, but lot of railway people, railway employees, Jagjit will tell you perhaps more about it. His grandfather was one of those who bought a huge amount of land as farmland. And there were other railway officials like Dr. P.N. Singh's father-in-law, Mr. Krishan Chandra, quite a few others who had bought this land. Mr. Dhamija, though not being a part of the railway group, he had also found this land, I mean, bought this land as farmland. But there no development had taken place. I believe on one side was the Aravali Hills, and on the other side was.
I thought you had baked yesterday.
No, today only I baked in the morning.
Morning में bake तो कर दिया था.
915 gram.
Okay.
So there was some, I think someone was talking or something. So anyway, I found at that point, Mr. Dhamija suggested to the Mr. Bhatnagar, Mr. Swarupanand Bhatnagar, that he should start making more members. Only when there will be more members and some of the senior officials of the ministries, then there will be more action taken. So he was the one, and his was the one who became sort of started making members and started talking to people, and a lot of people started joining in, especially at that point, a lot of people who had come from Pakistan as refugees or who had left their land behind and all, they became interested and they started joining the thing. At that point then, Mr. Dhamija once again intervened, and since there was no land available, they had suggested somewhere near where Anjus Ganj is now. But I think most of the members did not want that part. And again, thankfully, they didn't get it there. So Mr. Dhamija suggested that this land, since people have bought as farmland, but there is no development taking place, so why don't we transform this into housing society or whatever it was at that time. It wasn't called a housing society, but whatever it is that they would join. So I believe at that point, this proposal was put to the Home Minister and to the Prime Minister, who was also the External Affairs Minister at that time, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. And I believe this was told to me by Mrs. Dhamija, that he came personally to have a look at this place, and he also went around, and the land was rocky, but I think his car couldn't go. So either he went in a tonga or a horse or something, and believe that is what again the legend says, that he went around, he met the people of both these villages, Mochi Gaon and the Munirka village extension or Masoodpur, whatever it was. He met the people, talked to them, asked them if they were willing to go on to sell their land. And I think those people also realized that once this land is settled, it is developed, it will be economically good for them also, which has proved to be the case. But strangely, even at that point, our senior officers, most of them were then ICS officers who had become members, but they found that this was too far away from their place of work, which was either South Block or North Block. Today, we say that it is one of the nearest places and we are very close to it, but at that time, they felt it was too far away. But just at that time, the announcement was made by the Ministry of External Affairs that they are going to have Chanakyapuri, and where they would be giving land to the embassies. And so that was what immediately you find that at that point, a lot of people wanted to join because they realized what the potential would be, because most of the diplomats would like to stay in this area or closer. This was going to be the closest to Chanakyapuri. So that was when the real rush started. So it was then Shanti Niketan, which is called Site B, which he will show you on the map. That was allotted to us in the beginning. But when they found that the members were many, many more, we only have 192 plots over there, over in Shanti Niketan. So they found that the members were going to be much more. So then they asked for another site, and that was when DDA bought land from Basant Gaon. And as Vandana just said, they were going to name it Basant Nagar, but then, of course, it changed to Vasant Vihar and became much more interesting. So I think this is the history that I have told you about. So I don't know how much time I have. But one thing I would say that Mr. Bhatnagar's number was number one. It still is now. His son, Mr. Rakesh Chandra Bhatnagar, who is a resident of this, he still holds his number in the society list is number one. As member, he is number one. So he was, since he was the first one to have done this. And Mr. Dhamija's plot is 6 by 32. They were all given compensation. Since the land was taken away from them, they were given compensation. Some of them got 2,000 yards plot, I think, and others got somewhat less, somewhat more. And so this was the history. So I don't know how much time I have taken, Raj.
No, thank you so much, Padmaji. I'll move on now to Jagdeep. But
Okay.
the aspect of history of this area, Shantiniketan Vasant Vihar, that you have shared, I certainly didn't know any of this. I'm sure a lot of others also didn't know. So very, very interesting. I'm now
One
going
little thing I would like to add,
बताइए,
that
बोलिए.
the first president of the society,
Hmm.
Vasant Vihar and Shanti Niketan Society, was Mr. Sundaram, Mr. K.V.
Kalyan
Sundaram.
Sundaram.
And
Kalyan
he was
Sundaram, and that's
also, he was the chief election commissioner at that time. He was the president of this whole society. And of course, there were many ICS officers who got plots here in Shanti Niketan. And if Kalyan Kendras that have been made have been in his memory, that's why it is not a community development or community center like it is in other places, but we gave it the name Kalyan Kendra because it was a sort of a tribute to him.
Yeah, because his first name was Kalyan
Kalyan was
Sundaram.
Kalyan V. something Sundaram.
Yeah.
His, of course, son is a very famous sculptor. Sculptor. He is Vivan Sundaram. So I think we are proud to have him, though he never takes part in anything in Shanti Niketan, but he is here. So I will ask now Jagdeep to go on and talk about his.
Yeah. So I now call upon Jagdeep. Uh, so Jagdeep, today we want to hear about the colony, not so much about the artifacts that are in the showcase behind you, but tell us about your early memories and your experience of your life in this part of the world, if I may say.
Sure. Thank you, Raj. Good evening, everyone. It's really an honor and a privilege to be speaking to this August group this evening, who are all neighbors and friends in Shanti Niketan and Vasant Vihar. What I'm going to share with you briefly is kind of a history of my family, how they came to be in this part of town. And I'll share some timelines with you, and I'm going to share some amounts which are only for anecdotal purposes. For those who were not here at that time, they will understand how things have changed and how inflation has taken over. So only for that purpose I'm sharing this with you. So my grandfather, Shri N.D. Rikhi, was a senior bureaucrat in the railways. That generation of the family, everybody was a bureaucrat. They were all in the government service. But it is not because of that that we are staying here actually. The family had bought some land in village Mohammadpur, it was called, Mrs. Chid. Village Mohammadpur, Munirka was a village over here. and the family had bought a sizable plot of farmland over here. And the government, when the government decided that they want to do something, build a colony in this area, so my family decided that they would like, it was a large family, and they wanted to get some more plots, and everybody was entitled to land over here depending on how much they originally held. And the formula the government took out, one formula which I know of, is that whoever had 2 bighas of land was entitled to 1,000 square yard plot in the area. So this farmland was being acquired by the government, and there were other families also, like Mrs. Chib mentioned, who had land in this area. This was known as the Site A of Shanti Path extension. And I dug into our family records and I found this map of around 1958, 1960. I don't know how clear you can see it, but
So
there's
I
Shanti
actually made
Path.
you co-host so that you can share the digital page.
Okay. So I don't know how to do that right now, but
Okay.
this was basically a map I found in our family records, which shows Site A and Site B. Site A is Shanti Niketan and Site B, of course, is Vasant Vihar.
Any idea what is the age of this map? ये कब बना होगा?
This document
1957?
is around 1958, 1960.
Okay.
So the family had bought land here in the mid 50s. The farmland I'm talking about is around 54, 55. In 1958, my family made a cooperative society called Happy Folks Cooperative Society, in which different friends and family members took membership, so that big chunk of land was divided up, and then the government acquired from individual family members and from friends. And I remember that one, like in my grandfather's case, he was given a compensation of about rupees 6,900 for the 2 bighas plus of land that he had. And he eventually bought a 1,000 square yard plot for approximately 60,000 rupees. So that was the ratio. The compensation was around 7,000, and they had to buy land at a princely sum at that time of about 65,000, right?
Yeah,
This happened.
Vasant Vihar में जब allocate हुए थे, when the plots were allocated first, I believe the rate was 32 rupees per square yard.
Okay.
Was it higher in Shanti Niketan?
Well, this is from my record. What I got was that in 62, he paid 36,403 rupees for a 1,000 square yard plot.
Okay.
And later in 1988, the DDA asked for a enhanced compensation for the Shanti Niketan share was around 39 lakhs, out of which he paid rupees 25,000, around 24,732. So total cost to him for the plot was around 61,000 rupees. At that
you're right about 32,000 is absolutely correct figure. Even I remember that.
Yes. So another interesting anecdote is that in the records there are letters from Sri Jagmohan, who later went on to become the minister here. And in 1962 he was deputy housing commissioner in Delhi administration, and in 67 he became special secretary land and building, Delhi administration, and he used to write letters to the society and to the owners, eligible owners. And I found a list along with this document. I found a list of 36 people who were eligible for buying plots over here in Shanti Niketan in 1962. It must have grown after that, but those were probably either the people who originally held land here, or who came in later and were eligible to buy it. So my grandfather took possession of the plots in 1972. I remember we shifted to Anand Niketan in 73 from where we were staying earlier, because he wanted to build these plots. And the children, we used to go to St. Columbus and CGM. So our bus stop used to be in Moti Bagh. So we used to walk from Anand Niketan to Moti Bagh quite often, and we used to go through Shanti Niketan. And I remember that there were hardly any, there were very few plots that were built at that point of time. In fact, a little earlier, when my grandfather used to visit this and the family used to come here, I remember my sister told me, my elder sister, she used to ask my grandfather, कि हम जंगल में रहेंगे यहाँ पे? At that time there was probably hardly anything built around over here. So anyway, Finally, the family in 1980, we built one house over here. And I am told that it cost around 5 lakh rupees to build that 5-bedroom house, for which we gave our first, we gave it out on rent to the British High Commission and at a princely sum of 8,000 rupees a month. That was the rental going at 1980, about 42 years ago. Of course, the rest they say is history. We shifted here in 1989, and I have with my family, and I've been staying here ever since there. I was in college at that time, started my business. I had got married. I have children. The face of Shanti Niketan has changed, of course, over the years. It's always been a very premium colony. We are very privileged to live here. We've had fantastic neighbors and residents. And of course, we also across in Vasant Vihar, part of my family got plots over there. So you'll find whichever Rikhi's surname you find in Vasant Vihar. The Vasant Vihar Club was built during this time. We were very happy to become members over there. I remember enjoying a lot of squash and sports, and then the pool came up. So they were very happy memories. People often ask me, my neighbors and friends here, that you're now become the president of the Shanti Niketan RW. Why do you do this? And do you get time to do this? So my reply to them is, people like Mrs. Chev, like Mrs. Madhok, and other presidents, devoted time to the community, and that's why they were able to, keep this a very livable, very friendly neighborhood. So, it is our duty to continue with that, whether it's Shanti Niketan, Vasant Vihar. I know a lot of stalwarts in Vasant Vihar also have devoted a lot of time to preserve these colonies, to preserve the neighborhood. It's not easy. The day-to-day activities, the day-to-day liaison with the government, liaison with various agencies. You know how Delhi is. Everybody's a VIP. Everybody's a who's who. But we are very fortunate. We feel that the surrounding area, the neighborhood around Shanti Niketan, developed into an important part of town. The embassies came nearby. The airport was built not far. So in terms of convenience, also I think this area has developed very well. So this is the small story I wanted to share with you.
Thank you so much, Jagdeep.
And thank you everyone.
Let me tell you, don't feel sorry for walking from Anand Niketan to Moti Bagh. I used to walk from Vasant Vihar to Moti Bagh bus stop.
Wow.
So that's the closest bus stop at that time.
Right.
Anyway, so thank you so much, Jagdeep.
Sure.
I would next call another veteran of Shanti Niketan and the very well-known Mr. Satish Gupta. Mr. Satish Gupta. Actually, I should have announced it in the beginning. I'm sorry I didn't, but we would request everyone to keep a time limit of 5 minutes, because otherwise, we'll really have an overrun. So let's all keep a time limit of 5 minutes. Thank you, Jagdeep, and over to you, Mr. Satish Gupta.
राजीव, थैंक यू। सबसे बड़ी पहली बात मेरी ये है कि ये हमारे फादर को 1962 में मोती बाग सी ब्लॉक में क्वार्टर अलॉट हुआ था। ही वाज सीनियर ऑफिसर इन मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस। 65 के रहने से 62 से और 65 के बीच में ये सारी ये कॉलोनी बम्बार्डमेंट, तोड़ फोड़, रॉक्स थी यहाँ पे सारी, वो ब्लास्टिंग होती रहती थी और वो हमारे क्वार्टर में खूब सुनती थी। 65 के बाद में ये जो है प्रोसेस ऑलमोस्ट कंप्लीट ही हो गया था। 68 में फिर मीटिंग हुई और उसमें अलॉटमेंट ऑफ ड्रॉ रखा गया। याद तो नहीं है कौन सी जगह, वो मैंने अटेंड करी थी। हमारा पहली ड्रॉ में ही नाम आ गया शांति निकेतन में। वो 1968 में आया था विद राइडर कि 2 साल में हाउस आप कंप्लीट करेंगे। तो 2 साल में हाउस कंप्लीट करने के उसमें हमने 1970 होली पे मकान शुरू किया और दिवाली पे हम घर में थे। ये तो इसकी इतनी सी बात है। बाकी जो है ना, बस स्टैंड तो वही जैसे विक्की जी ने कहा, वहाँ वही एक ही था हमारे लिए भी, उसे कोई और था नहीं। और प्रेस्टिजियस कॉलोनी की भी आप जो बात कह रहे हैं वो है ही है, उसमें तो कोई कहने की बात ही नहीं है। और बाकी तो आई डोंट थिंक कोई खास बात मैं कहूँगा राजी बहुत
नहीं,
हाँ
thank you so much. So kind of you. And we have another veteran of this area and of Vasant Vihar, the ever young Mr. Mohan Aluwalia. Mr. Aluwalia, please share your experiences and memories of this area.
Actually, I don't have really very old memories, but I'm happy to hear the old memories from Padmaji and from Jagdeep. But basically, we came here in 74. Actually, that's the first time I used to work abroad for a long time. Then I was in Bangalore, and finally we came to Delhi, and then I was transferred to Nigeria around 75 or something. So we thought, why not build this before we go? So we built this house in Vasant Kumar, and it's a 5-bedroom house, and we gave it also to a rent before going. At that time, a sum of 3,000 rupees a month, something like that, And we went away. Then it was very difficult to get it vacated, but anyway, the God was with us, and we got it vacated, and we shifted here in about 1980-81. That's how, and uske baad mein we have since that time till today, we were in the same, except that 10 years back, we had to demolish it and make it into 4-story because the family, we have to divide the property between the brothers. But I remember, we used to walk quite a bit here. And I remember walking in E Block, that was behind us. I met a lady once called Kanta Soni. She was very hardworking and very, most of the E Block people know her very well. So she said, she called me. I don't
Most
know
of
how she
Vasant
knew
Vihar
me.
knows her.
Yeah, so how she called me by name, and they said that, do you have some time? I said, why do you ask? She said, I want you to join the welfare station. So we have 2 seats from E Block. I want to be one of them. I have never done this sort of work before, and I don't think anybody knows me. You forget about it, you just say yes, that's all. I said, okay. I said yes, and then we were the 2 people who were nominated from the E Block, myself and Mr. Mahajan. And we both, then we started, and Gautam Vora at that time was the president of the BBWA. That is the first time. But we did a lot of good work in the E Block while I was in the E Block for something. And basically, I don't know, a lot of people may not know, but during that time, myself, Kanta Soniji, and there's one Mr. Gupta, who is no more at the moment. We brought a pipeline from the main Palam, that dirty Nala. It was the Nala which goes by the side of, and from nursery, as a matter of fact, the Man Singh was the supervisor at that time. And somehow we managed to, it was so difficult. We managed to convince him to side with us. So he's convinced, and fortunately, the deputy commissioner, we knew that time also, he was a friend of my nephew. So and ultimately we got a permission to pump the water from Nala right up to E6 Park in the E Block, E6 Park. And you will be shocked, first we made a pump, we made a very big, huge tank in nursery, inside the nursery with the help of Man Singh. And we pumped the water, filtered there in that that big tank there. That was all. And from there, the pipeline started from the nursery. It went along A15, A5, and then A9, and then from the main Vasant Marg, it came all the way across the near the Delhi Public School, and went all the way to E6. And there, with the help of Mahashaji, we made a very big tank in E6 Park also. And from there, the water we started pumping on most of the parks in E Block at that time, And the amount of, you can imagine the amount of trouble we had in getting sanctions. At that time, we had to go to town hall, to get any sanctions at that time. And Gupta ji did a lot of help there, because I think he knew somebody, and most of the sanctions were done by him. And of course, and it was a very hard work to get it done. And the most difficult was the pipeline, because I mean, we had to have not SDMC, MCD at that time to help us to do it. And ultimately, they agreed to lay the pipeline. Then we had a problem. Actually, as a matter of fact, the first problem was from one of the presidents of VPWA later, because the pipe has to cross his house from the backside. And it took us almost 24 hours to convince him that let us cross. We'll restore the his entrance as it is. But you can just imagine 1.5 kilometer of pipeline, how difficult it was to get it approved and get it laid. So,
As
I
far
mean,
as
this
I
is
know,
something which not many people know, but it has been done.
But as far as I know, it is still being used, Mr.
Yes.
Ahluwalia, and
Good.
all the parks or most of the parks in E Block are fed by that water.
I think that's a good to know. I mean, this is something which I wanted people to know. And the second thing, after that, we stayed, and then finally, when my daughter got married, you will be shocked that we had 140 guests from outside Delhi, 140 from outside. And can you imagine, at that time, we had known some people, the E9 and Vasant Marg and A10, we got 40 friends, who gave us rooms. All the people who came from outside, we just like a family. Haan ji, haan, theek hai, but please make sure they have breakfast. No, they don't have to have breakfast, just stay with them. And some of them stayed for 3 days, some of them stayed for almost 1 week. Because the marriage was first marriage in our family. It lasted about a week, I mean, and that was a brotherly feeling I'm talking about that time. And also, I mean, we did also something, house in front of me, 57, Tej Kohli. He built the first floor during my presence. And Dolly Anand and Leena Anand in the 64 Vasant Marg. Leena's husband was also built during our time. And both of them used to come and spend whenever they got fed up, they used to come and spend the day with, sit with us, sit and have some cup of tea or drink water, and we help them. And they were shocked that, somebody helping them, they didn't even imagine that somebody will help them like that, So it was very good memory. And that otherwise, I don't think, I think people will know much more. Then we started working, as you know. And
Thank
that's
you
about
so
it.
much, Mr. Ahluwalia.
Yeah.
There is a request from Major General Murgai that he wants people to talk about something exciting from the early days of Vasant Vihar. So I hope one of the other speakers has some exciting stories. I'm going to move on back again to Shanti Niketan. And
Haji, can I just say one sentence, please, if you don't mind? I just forgot to mention that, while of course we really enjoy the facilities at the club at Vasant Vihar and Shanti Niketan, just one thing we are missing here is a good facility of the community center, which now of course the society and SNRA are working together. So we are hoping that in coming days and weeks we shall, fulfill that need also of the residents. Thank you.
I'm now going to request Pramila and Vijay Paul Benjamin to talk about their early days, exciting stories, as General Murgai says, if you have any, or whatever you want to talk about. मैं तो आपका नामकरण कर दिया, आपका नाम फिर बदल गया, कोई भी नहीं. Carry on.
We had a tap change here, so we were off air for some time.
Yes, I noticed. Carry on. So, who was going to speak first?
Well, I'll start because, I'm a little overwhelmed hearing to the speakers preceding me. They have such deep roots over here. I don't feel qualified to speak. In fact, when Mrs. Chip called me up and said, you should come and speak here, I very reluctantly agreed. I said, okay, I'll come. because I don't have much to say. You know, two things. One is my engagement here has been a little sketchy, and also because we are on the outer part of the colony, so it didn't get to interact much with people inside the colony. But nevertheless, since I have to speak, so maybe I need not take 5 minutes. Maybe I'll take about 2 minutes. And therefore, Pramila is here to, you know, fill in the other 3 minutes. Okay, quickly coming back to my stay here. The house here was built in 69. And it was one of the first few houses on the street which was built. I think it was the second house or the third house. But we didn't move in here at that time. We moved in much later. And we came in 78. I mean, the colony was a very laid-back colony, flat structures. At the most, people had a single story, but otherwise it was very, very flat and calm, quiet, peaceful. In fact, when my parents started building, you know, the house here, I was still in school. So I happened to be in Dolaco, and I came back and I came by here and I saw this place. It was completely barren, rocks, dry, with some hay grass growing here and there. You know, somebody mentioned about a river flowing through Vasant Vihar. You know, it just clicked a photo memory that this looked like Mars. Yeah, there might have been a river some centuries ago. It looked like that. So I told my parents, where the hell are you building a house? I'm not going to come and live there. So that was my first impression about this place. And it was so poorly connected. There used to be, I think, only one bus stand in Moti Bagh, and there used to be one, you know, bus which very reluctantly used to come once in an hour or so. It was so bad. Nevertheless, we came in 78, and I was still in the IIT, and it was convenient because within 10 minutes I could reach the institute. And I completed in the next 2 years. But I was really more involved in the ecosystem in the IIT. So I didn't get to react with people over here or interact with people here. But there were a few memories I had, you know, of the time. That is, because it was an open, planned sort of colony, hardly any people. There's a little market in front of our house. There used to be some dhabas over there. And there used to be a gentleman in a white kurta and a pant like dhoti, sorry, a pant like, you know, salwar, who used to come with a jhola to that dhaba and have tea with long gray hair. So I was a little curious. I could see him from the veranda of our house. I just wonder who's this person. So I asked, you know, who's this person? They said, "Saab, ye to koi painter hai yahan par. Aate rehte hain yahan." So later on, I realized that he was M.F. Hussain. He used to come very often here for a cup of chai at the dhaba. Sometimes he used to have no slippers. Sometimes he used to wear chappals. He used to come in old Fiat. So it was like that. Nobody bothered. I wish I knew that he would become so famous. I would have at least got a sketch made from him, nevertheless. But yes, it was very convenient as a location. Firstly for my studies, and later on when I was working, I was in Connaught Place. So everything was within 10 minutes. Shopping center was Connaught Place again, that was within 10 minutes. So it was very conveniently located. And even after I got married while I was here. When my children grew up, their schools were next door. My elder daughter was in DPS Vasant Vihar. My younger one was in Holy Child Auxilium, so it was very convenient. And they also used to go for music classes to the Delhi School of Music that was so close. So they did their grade 5 and 7. They were almost professional grades in piano. So it was, all in all, it was a good story for us. But for the incentive to go into the colony and interact with people was not there for me, because there was nothing. There was no activity, as Jagdeep had rightly mentioned. We had a Kalyan Kendra, but that was something like a ghost structure over there. Nothing much happening. So young people like us, we had nothing to do, no interest. So it's only after the club came up that we could go to the club. But by that time, in '88, I left India and I was in Vietnam. And I got back only in '92 and went out again, but at least my family stayed back. So I think I'll give over here to Pramila, then she can add on her bit with her engagement with Sadhu Vaswani School.
Sure.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I am Pramila Benjamin. I came to Shanti Niketan only after I got married. That is almost about 40 years ago. And at that time, the colony was, very peaceful, very quiet. And we had on both sides very nice, very simple neighbors. And I used to get along with all of them. And at that time, there was hardly any traffic. There was no, as soon as we used to, go out of the second street, there was not even a red light over there, and there was a complete cut. And we could easily go to DPS Arkepuram from there. Then slowly our red light came there, and we knew now the traffic is increasing. And then eventually that cut also, it got closed, and now we know how the traffic is over there. So really through these years, we have seen how the noise has come up, and this colony, which was known as Shanti Niketan, is no longer peaceful. But of course, I can't blame that, because now this is the problem in many colonies in Delhi. And slowly then construction started here. Earlier we had flat houses on both the sides, but still on one side I have a flat house. And then seeing the construction behind our house, this school came up in 1987. And earlier it was, a hillock. And there we used to have all these, slum dwellers coming there. And they used to come in the mornings for their daily, routine. And so there was nothing to look over there. And we could see lots of rocks and barren land. But when this school came up in 1987, slowly from a primary school, we had the principal, Mrs. Ram, she was the one who came and she started working on this school. And there were hardly any children, because around this colony, we had so many schools, Mount Carmel, then Springdales and DPS. So slowly, she had these extracurricular activities like Taekwondo. So our school was, that time, it was very good in Taekwondo, and other schools also slowly they took up this activity. And then also horse riding. So, but of course, that time I was not teaching in the school, and I used to see from my balcony, and children are there having horse riding there. Then slowly from the primary school, somehow the school, it became a full-fledged senior secondary school. And then in between, we also were not here. We went to Vietnam and came back in 1993. And at that time, the school was looking out for a science teacher. And then they asked, if I could join them. And I joined the school as a chemistry teacher. And I worked there
Hello.
1
minute.
Yes.
I will take leave. My dinner time has to, sorry for that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
So then I took up as a chemistry teacher, and I worked there for almost 23 years. So now, behind the house, we have a wonderful building of the school. They have a very good landscape. because it was a hillock, so they couldn't do much, there was not much flat area. So they have made it into a very good landscape, very beautifully. It has been done up. And of course, we are very happy now because we don't have this problem, of the slums over there. And I used to always worry, one day these slums will come up and they will mushroom over here. So then also they are maintaining a nice park. And also this colony, I would say, is a small colony, but we are very, lucky because we have about 7 to 8 parks over here. And these parks, they are maintained by the RWA. And of course, Mr. Ricky, he is the one who is looking after these parks. And I only go there for supervision. And so I really hope now that with all this, our colony, I pray that this colony always remains,
Sorry, I just want to correct, Pramila ji, you are the one looking after the parks. We're grateful to you for that. You're the one spending the time on this.
No, just trying, there are so many other problems along with that. Okay, so I just pray that this colony always, remains one of the best colonies in Delhi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pramila and Vijay. Coming back to another very well-known resident of Vasant Vihar, in fact, a very well-known couple of Vasant Vihar, Mr. Jaideep Ranade and Vinita Ranade. So, Vinita.
Thank you, Raj. And I think Jaideep will have to switch on. Sorry, I'm going to give a very personal story. I've called it the home we call Vasant Vihar. My father signed up for a plot in Vasant Vihar sometime in the late 1950s. We were living in Chanakyapuri at that time. It's called Diplomatic Enclave, the first occupants of the newly built houses on Satyamarg, which had just come up for the UNESCO meeting in Delhi. A thin wire fence lay between our homes and Safdarjung Airport, and we children would run freely inside, going right up to the runway to watch the gliders take off and land. The Ashoka Hotel had just been constructed on land donated by the Maharaja of Kashmir, and Vasant Vihar lay well beyond the city's outskirts, where jackals howled and all sorts of dangers were known to abound. It was in 1971 that my parents began building the house they planned to retire to. The area had a feel of a frontier town, with just a handful of houses dotting the barren, treeless landscape. As my father was posted in Calcutta at the time, my mother and I stayed in the newly built servants' quarters, from where she supervised the construction of the rest of the house, brick by brick, pillar by pillar, nail by nail. Cooking was done on a small gas stove, and occasionally the chowkidar would make thick rotis on the makeshift fire outside as we sat on muras under the stars. Modern Bazaar was then a small shop selling bread and eggs in C Block Market, and Savan Hardware and National Marble were our frequent haunts for building materials. We would spend the evenings walking around the colony, savoring our neighbors' flights of architectural fancy, where Spanish haciendas vied for attention with Swedish log cabins and every style in between. It may sound romantic now, but living was very difficult. The summer heat was unbearable, and every penny had to be saved for the house building exercise. And until then, all the women had led very sheltered lives, with all the comforts of position and home, and yet they soldiered on, umbrella in hand, braving all manner of hardships to build the one home they hoped to retire to. That was the era of tight controls, and cement and steel were hard to come by. We used to take the 14B bus into Connaught Place to plead with the ACC office to spare us a bag or two of cement. Often we returned disappointed. That was also the time when people locked their telephones, and making those urgent calls for cement and steel would turn into another nightmare. Mohanji, we didn't know you at that time. After being buffeted around in the cement office, we would sometimes lift our spirits at the Bankura Cafe outside Cottage Emporium and treat ourselves to a grand feast of cheese omelets and coffee before trudging back to Plaza Terminus to catch the bus to Malai Mandir. Those brief moments away from the grind of house building, few and far between as they were the highlight of our lives. Yet, the ladies who built Vasant Vihar found camaraderie in each other. They shared their trials and tribulations and their daily battles. Half in jest, my mother used to say, when Vasant Vihar is built, they should put up a statue of a woman proudly holding her umbrella, reminding those who come after us of the trials we have faced. No such statue exists to the women of Vasant Vihar, but it is with these words that I wish to pay tribute to all the women who undertook this labor of love to build the homes that we now have the privilege to enjoy. The Ashoka trees my parents had planted have now grown tall, and the house, which stood strong for 50 years, is no more. I hope the generations to come appreciate the sacrifice their forefathers have made to leave this wonderful legacy up for us, the home we call Vasant Vihar.
Thank you so much, Vinitaji. You referred to diplomatic enclave, and I think one of the other speakers also talked about it. As we all know that, in a sense, Vasant Vihar and Shanti Niketan have also become mini diplomatic enclaves because of the number of embassies and high commissions and consulates that are existing in these two colonies. You also talked about sitting on mudas and getting fresh rotis. I remember, and of course, some of them are still there, getting rotis from a dhaba which was not far from our house. You would send your man with the atta, freshly ground, kneaded atta in a katordan, and those would be converted to tandoori rotis and come back to your house. And of course, just as Vanna talked about PVR and the origin of the chain of multiplexes which PVR owns, Modern Bazaar is another icon of Vasant Vihar, which was started in a house in C Block. Was it Street C8 or C7? And since then, of course, moved twice within Basant Lok and now has, I don't know how many, 10 or 12 outlets pan NCR. So yes, Vasant Vihar has been a pioneer of a lot of these things. So thank you so much, Vinita. I'm now going to move back to Shanti Niketan and to Mrs. Sujata Madhok.
Thank you. And thank you, Vinita, for that, because it brings back many memories. Okay, so my father was in the Home Ministry in the 50s, and that's when he became a member of the society. Mrs. Chib has told you a lot of the detail about that period, even a lot which even I did not know. So I was glad to hear it, but I know that there are papers in the house from that period of time. But I remember that we were posted in Rajasthan for many years. We came back in the mid-60s, and one fine day we got into the car. We lived in Tilak Marg, and one fine day the family drove down to see this land. And we looked at it, and our reaction was just like Jagdeep's. It was like, is jungle mein kaun rahega? No. So, but anyway, that was what we had. And so we didn't think very much about it for a few more years until my father was, a couple of years away from retirement. At that point, he realized he should build. So now, as a retiring IAS officer, he couldn't get a loan. It was really hard to get a loan. Ultimately, an uncle of mine had to stand guarantor. He was in the LIC, and so that guarantee was accepted, and he got a loan to build his house. So they built the house, again, as Vinita said, with it's really the women who do the work because the men are working at jobs. So I recall that my mother would come every single day to this place and stand here in the sun, in the heat, and just supervise the construction. And in the evenings, my father would drive down after his office and pick her up, and they would go home. And my mother used to say things like, you know, जब 5 बजते हैं तो सब workers जरा हड़बड़ाते हैं. They all want to go home because they don't feel very safe in this area after dusk. So they want to leave quickly. Anyway, that's the way the house was built, with a great deal of, I mean, really just standing there supervising it all. And we moved in after a few years. The house was on rent for a while. They were abroad, then they came back. We lived in Anand Niketan for some time. And I think everybody who lived in Anand Niketan recalls that long walk to the Moti Bagh bus stand. I don't know how I did it, how I got to Moti Bagh at 7:30 in the morning, and so did my sister. But we got the U special, the university special, and went all the way across the city to Delhi University. That was, we were young, we could do it, it was fun. But after, you know, when I got my first job in the Statesman, which in those days was a pretty good paper, but once a week I had to come home late. And that once a week, in winter, if I was walking home from the bus stop at about 9, the streets were almost deserted. It was just a little scary coming home at that time, walking the long road down to Anand Niketan. Anyway, that passed, and later we moved into this Shanti Niketan house, and it still stands, although I don't know for how much longer, because it is an old house, and it's showing some signs of wear and tear. But I'm happy we've lived here for so long. You know, times were simple. My sister got married from this house. The Vedi was constructed in the back, you know, in the back of the house, in a lawn, under a couple of trees. It was lovely to do that. And the wedding reception was in the neighborhood park, because that's how people did things then, you know. What I miss is the fact that people in the society, I mean, walked around, knew each other, were neighborly. It doesn't happen very much anymore because over the years, the nature of the colony has changed. Many of the people who lived here have changed. And I mean, I remember a time when the men would, retired elderly men would walk with one dabba happily to the milk booth and get the day's milk supply. And then later, and these are all retired bureaucrats, but they would do all this and think nothing of it. Or you would see the women carrying a lot of supplies from the local market back to the house, no issues. And most men would walk to our Indian Bank. Indian Bank is a sort of great institution here. So they would walk down to the Indian Bank, do a little banking work, chat with a couple of other people they met on the way or in the bank, wherever. And in much later years, I found myself doing the same thing. And my daughter said to me, "What do you do in the bank every day?" You know, and I say, "You don't realize it's a little bit of a walk for me. I get out and about." So, as I said, I miss those much simpler times when people didn't just get into cars, they didn't have drivers in cars, and they didn't exercise in gyms. They walked around the area, they walked in parks. But that's life now, changes. And we change with it if we can. Yeah, my sister's somewhere here. So does she want to say anything? And I don't know, I can hear Sanjana. I can see Sanjana asking her.
maybe Sanjana, we ask Kirti for the next session to give her full, story. But
So,
thank you so
Kirti,
much.
please prepare something, and we would
Yeah,
love to listen to stories about you getting married.
yeah. Well, getting married in Vasant Vihar or in Shanti Niketan, yes. Um, so thank you so much, Sujata. And actually, I think in the last um session, I had talked about my sister getting married in Vasant Vihar in 1972, but not inside the house. The plot was probably not so big, but in the park in front of our house. And even my wedding reception was held in that park. And Vinita mentioned about the 50-year-old house not being there anymore. Unfortunately, even my 53-year-old house has recently been demolished and I'm having to redo. So life is changing in Vasant Vihar, but let me share that, there is still a very strong neighborly connect. As soon as this call or the Zoom session finishes, I'm walking down to a neighbor's house for drinks and dinner, and tomorrow another friend is coming over to my house. So that bonhomie is still very much existing in the neighborhood, and I'm so happy. I mean, it's really a delight to be in this area. So thank you so much, Sujata. We will move on to our last speaker of the day, Mr. C.M. Mehta. Mr. Mehta.
Good evening, everyone. Well, I'm going to talk something about, I won't be talking very long. I'll be brief. Shanti Niketan, one of the elite colonies of Delhi, proud of its beautiful and neat layout, quiet and serene, with wide roads, open spaces, parks. Well, all this was to allow its residents to breathe healthy and fresh air, which is not the case today. With easy accessibility from all directions, we had no problem coming into the colony, unlike some of the neighboring colonies, and devoid of any pollution or noise. Today we have generators soaring, we have booster pumps working, and things have changed a lot. Initially, the plots were given only to the government servants who were members of the Government Servants Cooperative Housing Society, and the land here was given to my dad, who was in the Ministry of Defense, Naval Headquarters. I remember having seen a letter in his old papers, since he's no more, unfortunately, sometimes in the 60s, 63 or 65, something, the allotment letter was given to him. And initially when we came to see, he told us, come on, go and see. We were also reluctant to shift to this place. And I remember first time when I came to Shanti Niketan, sometime in the 70s, at the time of the construction of our house. At that time, there was no builder lobby. We had to engage a contractor and do the supervision ourselves, as everybody did. And the life was much simpler, as Mrs. Madhok said. At that time, I thought the name Shanti Niketan was very apt, since you could hardly find any walkers beyond 7 p.m. in our colony. The market wore a completely deserted look. Those who moved in much earlier have already mentioned about their experiences, and they have so many other different things to tell. Now, I was associated with Shanti Niketan RWA for many years, contributing to the welfare and the further improvement of the colony. Initially, I was called by some of the stalwarts like Mr. Verma and Mr. Kishan Chandra to come and join the RWA, since there were hardly people who were willing to work for the RWA. Well, I reluctantly agreed, but I think I did the right thing because I came to know so many people in the colony. And I am also thankful to Mrs. Padma Chip who initially, myself and Mrs. Charbachek, we did the spade work in the whole of the colony. And I'm happy that I got associated with the RWA. The get-togethers at that time, we used to have annual get-togethers in our colony, maybe at Diwali and Holi. And these get-togethers used to be at a very nominal cost. The idea was that we meet each other, know each other, and make friends. And the atmosphere used to be very friendly atmosphere, and one could make many friends with children enjoying each other's company. You could also spend a pleasant afternoon in the small library at the Kalyan Kendra. Now, at the Kalyan Kendra. However, over the years, the character of the colony has undergone a sea change, completely changed. Delhi's population soaring to new heights, demand grew bigger and bigger. Many of the city dwellers were aspiring to own a dwelling unit in the spacious environs of Shanti Niketan. The only option for these people was if someone moved out or sold or rented the property, and depleting land in the city added to the pressure of opening it to the others. The builders' lobby sensed the opportunity and jumped in. And the beautiful single and two-story bungalows were demolished to make way to 4 or 6 unit structures. The infrastructure was not designed for the same. And there was a large demand for power and water, rightly. Requirement of booster pumps for water and power generators emerged, contributing to the noise and pollution. Well, today the character, as I said, has completely changed. Now, today it is a gated colony of mixed character, ranging from upper middle class to super rich. Many of the residents hardly know each other, though we continue to have our annual festival gatherings. These gatherings are now more like parties where the attendance is low with the rich social quotient going up. This is a change I have observed over the years. So what I'm trying to say is that with the change in the character, with the more and more people coming in, definitely people don't find time to see each other. But then some of the old residents, they still continue to meet each other. And I remember when I first joined RWA, it was stalwarts like Mr. Kishan Chandra and Mr. Verma who called me and persuaded me that you must join, though I was reluctant. And initially, there was hardly anything. I mean, we had no supervisor, we had nobody to work for us. I used to write all the letters by hand. So things have changed now. Life was much simpler.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Mehta, for your memories. I will, with your permission, disagree a little bit. I think it's up to all of us to continue to, meet our neighbors, friends around. As I just gave an example, we are not hesitant to walk over to somebody who is, within half a kilometer within Vasant Vihar and meet them. I think we should continue with that kind of bonhomie and neighborliness. So thank you so much, Mr. Mehta. I'm now going to ask General Shankar Prasad to say his concluding words before we end today's session. General Shankar Prasad.
Thank you so much, Raj. What a nostalgic evening this has been today. And everyone who's spoken here has lived here for close to 50 years. Even I recall that my parents moved here in 1971, and 1970 my father retired. And he had all the plans to go back to Bareilly in Uttar Pradesh from where he came. But he's got this plot here. And when my father and mother first time drove into here, my mother's first comment was, "Ye jungle mein kahan ja rahe hain, bhai? We can't stay in this jungle." Living in Luton, Delhi for so many years. So that's the story with each one of us. And my parents built the house in 71, 72. They lived here till the last moment. In fact, I must say with great pride that we have not changed a brick in a house. The house remains 1.5 story or close to 2 stories, which my father built. And we have no intention of bringing it down and making flats here, which is where the whole colony has changed its concept. The single-storied or 1.5 or 2-story bungalows, as we used to call them, have been converted into multi-story. And there are not more than a handful of people who are old residents and the original plot owners, but the bulk of the population lives in Vasant Vihar, are in multi-storied flats that we built all over it, with 19 schools in this colony. Anyway, that can't be reversed. But the interesting thing, and 2 or 3 other points that I wish to make, is that initially when Mrs. Padma Chip spoke and Jaideep spoke, I was finding it very interesting, particularly these 2 speakers, because they have such a lot of history in what they said. And Raj, you have recorded it, and I would request Jagdeep and Mrs. Chib, could you please write it down for us? In the magazine that has recently come out on the 1st of February, which is the monthly magazine of the club, we carry one article on one of these programs by Vandana Bhatnagar, and she's written her memories or reminiscences. So I would request Mrs. Chib and Jagdeep to please put it on a piece of paper. We will publish it in our next magazine. And all the others who have spoken today and on the previous meeting and in the future meetings, I request you to write it down. We'll publish these in our magazine. And at the end of it, we may be able to convert it into a book. Maybe at the end of this year, we'll have so much material on Vasant Vihar from the residents here that we should be able to compile it into a very interesting book, maybe illustrated book. So the objective is that in 12 months' time from now, we should be able to convert all these writings which will appear in a magazine every month into a book. And of course, a very interesting thing has come up today, which I never realized, is that women played a very major role in the construction of Vasant Vihar. And therefore, there is a need, Raj, in our managing committee to discuss and decide as to how we can create a statuette of a lady with an umbrella. And I think we must find a suitable place for it. And yes, and we must do it. And as right in the beginning, Mrs. Chip said, Mr. Kalyan Sundaram, who was the first president, his son, Vivan, is a great sculptor. And his wife is my classmate from modern school. And of course, so therefore, if we really decide to do a sculptor, which we must try, we can ask Vivan to help us, do this for us. So it's been a lovely evening, and thank you very much for participating in it. But my earnest request is, please put it down in writing. You will get a recording of today's program by tomorrow morning. If you wish to recall or re-see, go back to again what you said the previous evening, you can do that. But all of you must write it for us. And Vinita spoke about her getting married. Perhaps many others got married, and my son got married from here. Of course, I am on the older side of all of those who are present here. I didn't live here very much in Vasant Vihar. My parents came here in 71. I had got married before that, and being in the army, I stayed out of Delhi quite a lot. But whenever I was in and out of Delhi, of course, I came and lived in Vasant Vihar. And I must confess that till my retirement in 2002, I had no idea what the society is about. Although I was a member of the club, as nominee member, which my father made, but I had no idea about what the society is. It was the first time when I was wanting to come into the society affairs, I came with zero knowledge about it. And so I did 3 years stint earlier, and I'm doing it again. And of course, this time I find it so different, different issues that come up, different problems that come up, different solutions have to be found. And the last thing I want to say is this: while this book has to be compiled sooner than later, maybe a year later, I want to reduce it on its writing. And we have now introduced a new thing for the last 4 years now, which is a literary festival, which is again trying to get the community together. We have done, I think, 2 or 3 physical lit fest. We have done 1 Zoom lit fest. Unfortunately, this year we are not able to do because of the COVID restrictions, but we've only postponed it. We haven't cancelled. We plan to do it in September or October if the pandemic ebbs out. But right now, we still want to do a similar Zoom program. We'll give it a heading. We'll do it sometime in March, a similar discussion as we did in Lit Fest. And that the whole purpose is to get the colony people together, particularly those who have nostalgic memories about this place, about the club being constructed in 1990. So we want to activate these historical events into modern times, and we need the help of all of you who are old residents here. because the new residents who have come here, who are comparatively much younger, who bought flats here, are not that deeply attached to the colony. It is the set of people whom I see today. Like Mr. Indresh Narayan said, he got married here, and his daughter got married to my son a little later. So we have got such nostalgic memories about this colony. But the new people, and they're perhaps a larger number now, who have not much attachment to the colony. So we older people, before we pass away, we must make this family a little stronger by participating in all these activities. Thank you so much. I really mean to thank every one of you who have participated in this program. And Raj and Sanjana, thank you so much for curating for us. It's been a lovely evening. Maybe we can do one or two more of these before we exhaust the elderly residents of the colony. Thank you so much, Raj. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Raj, can I just say one thing, please?
Yeah, just one last sentence, that anybody who is on this meeting today and who wants to participate in any of the future sessions, or if you know of someone who is interested in speaking, please do call either me or Sanjana. And, we would be keen to add your name to the next list. Yeah, Sanjana, over to you.
I was just going to add and say that we plan to have the next VVSN diary on the 9th of March. And we would love young people to come and take part. I mean, we've heard stories about when the colony was formed, but we would like to hear from younger people who have lived here over a period of time about their stories as well, about their memories of living in the colony. So,
as you know, Vandana and I spoke last time, and both of us are quite young.
yeah, I mean, Vandana is one of the, I mean, she has a long association, but she's relatively younger. So, yeah, I mean, and
Relatively young.
maybe people who are even younger, I mean, maybe her daughters who've been living in Vasant Vihar. It would be very nice to have them on the next session to hear what they have to say about Vasant Vihar.
And Raj, now that I can see Mrs. Padmaji, thank you so much. You gave us such terrific information. Please put it down in writing. We want to convert it all into a book on Vasant Vihar.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I just want to add one thing. The name to this colony was given by one Mrs. Kalra, who lived in 2x5, and they were discussing what name they should give. Since it was a quiet colony, very peaceful and all, and since it was already called as Shanti Path Extension, they decided to call it Shanti Niketan. Not that it is that shantiful now, but still, I mean, we have a lot of other noise and activity that has come up, but nevertheless, this was the name given at that time.
Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone. And
I just want to thank General Shankar Prasad for taking the idea forward of a statue to the women who have built Vasant Vihar.
I think it's a great idea, and also
from the jungle it was.
Yeah.
So the book, I think, is a great idea.
The statuette will come up.
It's wonderful. Thank you.
All right. And with that, wish you all a good night.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raj.